taking a while. Chaz doesn't know how to be quick. Well, it's me. I'm the one who talks too much. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
All right, so we're talking about Arceus now, right?
Yep.
Last of Us episodes 1 and
Alright.
2.
Yep. We're finally getting to our main topic for this week. All of us got to watch episodes 1, and then
Not Blitz.
He's
He's just here. He just randomly showed up today, so we're gonna spoil everything for him.
Join.
He just crawled out of the closet and be like, "How you guys doing?"
I came back.
So
yes.
So Last of Us HBO's episodes 1 and 2. So what did you guys think? Just overall, I mean, did you like it? I mean, I will say for me, well, go ahead, Phoenix. You're the one that's played the game.
That's why I don't want to give my opinion yet. Like,
Okay.
so I'm the only one out of this group. Well, Blitz, have you played The Last of Us?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
Both of them. Yeah.
So he's played but hasn't seen the show. I've played both and I've seen the show, and then Chaz and Metal have only seen the show. Okay, so I'm really curious how you guys feel without knowing. Well, I know Chaz, you watched like a Let's Play of like 2 or something, but you've never seen.
I did, yes.
Have you seen a Let's Play of the first game?
I played the first game. I played like the first hour or two.
Okay, but everything else about the first game, nothing. No experience. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you guys feel about the show because it does deviate from the game some. I'm curious if you have any inclination on maybe where it might change, if you care, if you like where it's at.
I think from what I understand, where it deviates is the I've read it's like the spore versus the in the original game they were spores. In this game they're kind of going more the route of like these thready like
Tendrils,
worms, tendril type things. And how that differentiates is that the spores in the original game could go airborne, so there was more mask-oriented type things. Whereas with this one, they're going more like the route of like these tendrils are like nerves, and they all have like connectivity. And if you touch one, they can communicate with each other, and hive mind type stuff. I believe, other than that, what about you, gamer? Is there anything else you?
I was gonna say play the B-roll.
Oh yeah.
So
actually, I'm not gonna flag. I have a feeling this is gonna get flagged.
Oh, you know what? You're right. Are you? We don't want
to.
I'll
just leave it on. I'll just leave it on images.
But
it'll just be images.
Yeah. All right. So I knew it had something like going into this. I knew that the game had something to do with like, kind of some undead kind of stuff.
Zombies.
So that's the only thing that I knew. But I didn't know anything else. And I knew the names of the characters already. That was the most I ever got. I didn't know who Ellie was or Joel. I just knew that they were the main characters. That's it. So when I saw the first episode, which is what, an hour and 10 minutes.
Hour and a half.
Yeah. The character development was really good. I think how they kind of shifted, or I guess how they led up to the whole 20 years later after all the stuff beforehand happened. I'm not sure if in the game it really did, they played that type of stuff at all. But I'm not sure how much of it was with his daughter and all this other stuff, but you kind of get attached to it in the beginning, and then they just already within the first 20 minutes they pretty much kill off the first character.
Well, from what I understand, in the game
too. So
did they? I don't know. This is what I'm saying. Like, I don't know.
The game starts out basically the night everything goes crazy. You don't get any of that build up.
I was gonna say with the game, from what I've heard, there's less character development before.
You've got like 30 minutes before everything kind of hits the fan. Like Joel comes home, says hey to his daughter. She gives him the watch, and they go to sleep, and then things are crazy. You don't get the whole flashback, what the girl did during the day, any of that kind of stuff. The stuff with the crazy lady next door. It's just you hit that. Yeah, you get none of that. You get the gift of the watch. I mean, the watch does mean something down the line, but it's all very quick. And that's, games, they do storytelling differently, right? The exposition is given as you're walking through the house as the daughter. You can read newspaper articles, and you can look at pictures, and you can watch the TV. So that's where they kind of build upon it. But as far as what's happening, it's that night, things hit the fan, and
Mhm.
you're pretty much right into the whole thing. They're in the truck driving off, and then it ends how it does in the show.
Yeah, where the army dude comes over and just kind of just opens fire pretty much.
Hmm.
I like
That's
that. I like that callback kind of between the two very similar situations where, um, when the first time when he has Sarah, he thinks about acting or doing something because he notices that soldiers, probably is going to start shooting at them, and ifto facto that like that's how Sarah dies. And I like how later on, at the end of the first episode, when they're dealing with that one familiar police officer with
oh yeah, and then he
officer,
punches her in the face
and
like
and he
endlessly.
gets like the flashback to the
Yeah,
first time, and
I thought
he
that was really
brut-
cool.
brutally kills the guy.
Bro, he broke his hand in the process.
Mhm.
He was like, ouchies. And it's like, really? You hit him that hard, yo? I mean, but then, yeah, at the same time, it's actually really cool that they actually did bring that back.
What I thought was interesting was the time frame they set it in, because the game I don't think set it at the exact same
There were cell
time.
phones. There were cell phones, so it had to be late '90s, early 2000s.
The game
Yeah,
I
it was
think
a
took
little
place
brick
at
phone.
like 2010 or something like that, is when things were bad already. This game started out like early 2000s, like George
There were
W.
Yeah.
cell
Bush
phones.
time.
Yeah.
My
Mhm.
point being is, I thought it was really interesting how they tied in, early 2000 American terrorist issues into that a little bit, because they thought that was, where everything was coming from. I thought that was an interesting kind of, social take on terrorism and kind of the, stuff that could occur from it, etc. And then it jumps forward 20 years to right now, right after we've just gone through a global pandemic. Like, the
Yeah.
timing shift actually makes everything a lot more relevant and adds context that the game didn't really have. The game was just started in some time, and then you're 20 years later, and it's pandemic. This was before any of that other stuff. So the context
Yeah.
I thought was really nice.
I like how
those
they
darn
pulled back on.
vaccines.
I'm sorry?
I'm
Oh.
kidding.
I like how they pulled back, like, right in the beginning, that they talk in, like, 1983, and then they kind of talk about it in the news.
Yeah, I liked that setup with
And
scientists. That was new.
that was really cool, and I like how they kind of get you thinking about, oh, well, there's these things that, what if something was to happen? And that there was no medicine or no virus or no way
Both
to cure it.
both of those opening scenes of both episodes were some of my favorite parts. I loved like the whole one that took part in Jakarta in the second
Oh, yeah,
episode,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
the same
yeah.
one in the first. Like I loved both of those sections.
The
Yeah.
Jakarta thing was crazy. That was really neat. It almost reminded me of like like if they were talking about like the whole Wuhan thing.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
it
like that's
adds like
kind of where it's
a
going
whole
to.
new perspective that hits home a lot more. Like we go back 5-6 years ago even, and if somebody was like talking about the potential of a global pandemic, we all be like, that can't happen. Just like the scientist at the very beginning in that talk show, and then
She's
he
like,
flips it as like, well, it could happen if this step happens where things heat up, etc. And us coming off of COVID and thinking about global warming, we're like, well, crap. So that kind of stuff actually happens.
I
And
liked
then of
how
course like the
with,
Wuhan kind of correlation with the Jakarta stuff. Yeah.
I liked how with the Jakarta stuff where the guy was just asking her like, "What do we do?" And she's
And
just
she's
like,
like blow up the whole
um,
place.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I like how they actually like had to set that up. Like
Mhm.
it's really crazy. They first off they bother her while she's having lunch, which is really screwed up. And then they take her to this freaking place and they put her in a freaking hazmat suit. Like, are you serious right now? Like, what the hell's going on? Like, I'd be worried too if I was being brought in and all you are is a freaking professor,
Yeah.
and you're studying this thing, and all of a sudden you see this nonsense happening.
and it also comes back to the bomb thing because remember they're walking around. Was it Boston where they're at? And
Yeah.
See the craters.
Ellie sees the crater, and they start talking about that.
The game, or not the game, the show, which the game does not do, does a really good job giving you some extra context and setting up the hopelessness feel even before the event occurs, which I think was pretty cool. It kind of sets the horror tone a little differently. It's not just like, monster horror at this point. It's now just the horror of the inevitable kind of coming up.
Well, something I heard that I didn't even catch when I first watched the first episode is there was a scene where you see the little kid walking through the destroyed city, and they get to the compound. I thought that was Ellie at a young
I
age,
thought that
but
too, and it's not.
but apparently that little girl like died. That's why it was such a stark like
Yeah.
because they made it seem as though they were very welcoming and going to be
Oh,
warm towards the
you didn't
girl,
catch
and then
that?
I thought it was Ellie, and then the next scene I didn't put two and two that
They showed the
Joel was-
shoes, man.
I
Yeah.
didn't see it. But apparently, Joel's packing the body of that little kid.
Yeah, everything's very just hopeless, and no one's safe. Doesn't matter if you're a kid, an old lady, whatever. You all can succumb to it. But anyway, I know we're jumping around a lot. I kind of want to go back and kind of work through that first episode a little bit.
We don't need to follow it. I mean, we can kind of jump around. I mean, I kind of felt like, in terms of like looks, I felt like it was really beautiful. Like I felt like some of the sections were like really good looking. Like the whole plane section, when they start walking around Boston, everything looks fantastic. Like I don't know, I kind of had it in my notes. Like show was starting to feel like a more interesting The Walking Dead. Like I remember how that show first started. Like I feel like it looks better than something like The Walking Dead did at the time. But sorry, I don't know, where did you want to go?
Oh no, that's fine. I just know we jumped around, so I was trying to see if we want to get back on track to that first episode. But no, I agree.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
The look of and that's one thing that I think The Walking Dead didn't quite have the same way that The Last of Us, even as the game, had. The world is more of a character in The Last of Us. The Walking Dead, I think, a little less so. Like, it's still, I think, so fresh in The Walking Dead. Like, the infection happens, and then everything's just chaos. It's just, apocalyptic. This is really post that, right? They've already learned how to live in this world more. Nature has taken over in a different way. There's a lot more history, I think, with what's happened in the world. So there's just a lot more detail when you're kind of looking over the architecture and whatnot, which is interesting.
Now,
what? Yeah. Good. No, I was gonna say, like, it kind of reminded me of like the whole Raccoon City thing. Like, it's just like, oh god, everything's happening. Things just blew up. Things are, don't know, like the virus has spread horribly, or something worse, like in like Parasite Eve or something, where it's like, oh, mitochondria, Bjorg, it goes out of control. It's like it's really neat how they kind of build that entire first episode.
That's how you scare people. You just throw the word mitochondria around.
Yeah.
The mitochondria.
Mitochondria.
Well, I was gonna ask. So did because they mentioned it a couple times that the virus originally started in like a grain factory, and then how the old lady, before she turns, she's being fed a piece of bread from the old man in the first episode. So are they saying that the fungus originated from grain and wheat, or are they just saying that it originated in a grain and warehouse factory because that is a good storing point for fungus? Like fungus likes wheat and grain.
So I didn't recall that.
They did mention that
in the second episode.
It was like a flour and grain. Yeah,
it's a grain. Yeah, wheat and grain. Yeah. In the second episode, when she at the very beginning, when she's talking to the sergeant or whatever,
must have missed a subtitle.
He's like, where did you get this lady from? And she's like, she was a worker at a.
Oh, I caught that. I didn't catch.
She was a worker.
Okay, I guess I just didn't catch that was the first outbreak. I mean, I thought maybe that was just like early on, so I didn't draw that connection. That's fair.
Well, they were like, yeah. That's why they're like, how many? She's like, how many people did you not catch? And they're like, he's like 14.
1 to 4. Yeah, 1 to 4 to like 14, and did they even catch like the original? Like
that was the big deal. Yeah, they didn't catch the original. They got the other ones and they executed them. They didn't catch the original though.
That's the thing. Okay.
Well, that might be it. Then, I didn't draw that correlation within the old lady eating the food. I had heard
the guys, because they're remember Joel and Ellie and Tommy are getting into the truck, and the guy's like, would you like one of my good old biscuits over here or something?
Oh yeah.
And he's like stuffing the biscuit in the old lady's mouth, but yeah, and then immediately after that, the old lady turns. But they also
you're right.
But they had been saying she'd been going to the hospital.
She'd been going into the city,
and she was like kind of going like crazy in the hospital. Like you see it in one of the scenes that she was just staring into nothingness. Like
that's what I meant. Is I didn't know if they were saying that.
Like she got affected.
Was the grain and wheat factory just a prime place for fungus to grow, or is it stemming from grain and wheat?
That's so hard to say. Maybe they might have been dropping that hint. I mean, I think if you're trying to then logically make the connection between that first outbreak at a grain and wheat factory to the old lady eating the bread, like I'm trying to even think of the timetable between everything happening, because the world goes to crap real fast when things start happening. I don't feel like there's enough time for the grains to have been packaged and sent off to then infect the old lady, and I don't know. Maybe that's where they're going with it. It's an interesting take. Ultimately, I don't know how much it really matters.
How many did they say what year it was before the outbreak?
Yeah, it was like 2002 or 2003. It was early 2000s. They said that, and I know then they panned a picture of George W. up on the wall to kind of hit things home a little further.
Too much, too much carbs, man.
I'm pretty sure it's 2003 because the show's now set in 2023. It's a 20-year jump.
Right.
So, what did you guys think of? Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, what did you guys think of Pedro and Belle Ramsey? Did you like them? I was thrown off by Pedro's accent at first, and he really started to grow on me later on. Like, I felt like it sounded weird at first, but I don't know, stuck with me.
I think he sounds a lot like Joel. Like, his accent sounds like Joel to me. I mean, maybe a little different, but it's got kind of that little Southern Texas, kind of twang going on in there. So, like, it fits.
I think it works.
And he looks like Joel. I mean, I know he's Pedro, so he's not exactly, one-to-one kind of a character as Joel was set up.
You say Pedro?
I said Pedro.
Oh, I thought you said Pedro.
Pedro. That's what I'll call him now. He's Pedro. I thought the casting's been really good. I think Pedro Pascal does a fantastic job as Joel. I mean,
and
he feels like an extension of it.
He starts to seem more like Ellie too.
She doesn't look as close. Like, I can see Joel in Pedro. I don't see, at least visually, Ellie in was it Bella Ramsey? That's her name. I don't see the aesthetic as much, at least in the face, but the way she acts and the way she talks, she's just like Ellie. So, I mean, that's, I think the important part. So the casting, I think, is really solid.
You know what's funny? I kept making a weird ass correlation yesterday when I kept watching it, and I kept telling myself, "This is hilarious. Why does he look like Harrison?" And I kept thinking to myself, "Man, just give that guy a whip and a freaking brown like nice hat. You got Indiana Jones."
Really?
I was like, dude, yeah. I don't know why.
See that.
And the only reason why I say that is because inside of the where was it? Inside of the I think the one of the buildings that they went into, and they were going up the stairs. Everything was like kind of crumbling down. I think it was
there
in
a boulder?
They're running from a boulder.
No, but when they went upstairs and then they went into that room right before everything starts crumbling down.
Oh,
that reminded me of that whole scene. This should have been a boulder coming down there because that would have been it right there.
Just a clicker comes up and goes Kalima.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, it's like, oh man, I'm just expecting this guy to just pull out a whip.
He's like, I've never seen a clicker yell at me.
Why'd it have to be clickers?
What is this?
You're onto something, man. You're onto something. We need more whips in zombie movies.
Yeah, buddy. I don't know. I thought it was funny. I think the casting's fine.
No, I kind of just went through all my notes, and that's pretty much all I had. I mean, the only other thing I thought was kind of a talking point is I saw a lot of people talking about how Chess had gotten done dirty, which from what I read,
that stupid Kotaku article.
Really? Tess. From what I read, that's basically what happens to her in the game. So it's like,
yeah, I called it, man. I called that thing really quickly. Like,
I didn't see anything wrong with it. I mean,
I don't know. I just knew she was gonna go. Like, when I was watching it, right? I looked at like halfway through that. I was like, she's not gonna make it.
Was it that aspect, or was it the aspect of the mouth to mouth that people were angry about?
This is stemming from there's a Kotaku article that came out today or yesterday. It was called "They Did Tess Dirty." I think it was a pretty bad take. They basically were mad about two accounts. One, they felt like this show version of Tess they didn't make tough enough or like a strong enough character.
Awesome.
That's what I thought. Strong. Like, they made her sound like, oh, in the game she was a super complex, diverse kind of character that was super strong and whatever, and that didn't translate over into how they're treating her in the show. Like, they made Joel the big, strong, scary guy, and she was soft, which that is not how I read her in the show at all.
They did not do her like. They did not do her like Cortana or something.
Yeah, no, I mean, they set her up a little different in certain things, and there's certain parts of the game they didn't add, and like there's this whole like firefight they're supposed to have when they're chasing after the one dude for the battery. That was in the game. That certainly makes Tess pretty tough in that interaction. That's not in the show. I don't think it matters though. I think the way they treated the character if anything, I think makes her stronger in a lot of ways and gave her a lot more depth than she had in the game. Like in the game, she was only there for like 2 hours, like literally, and that's with game time. So like she was there, you went the battery, she dies. So honestly, she had more character development, I think, in these 2 episodes than she had in the game. And the other thing oh, go ahead.
Or go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was saying the other thing that the Kotaku article was mad about was the way that she got infected at the end. I mean, she was already infected, but the way the clicker came up and basically kissed her with the tendrils, they were like they over-sexualized that. I think they were going for like a rape kind of thing. Like they shouldn't have gone that direction.
I did not feel that at all.
Well, from what I understand is I actually listened to it on a podcast, but from what I understand, they went a different route with this form of fungus, or apparently there's different like strands or whatever of this this condition, and apparently the specifically with this one, much of the fungus can grow in the mouth because it's more humid, it's more warm, and it makes sense that like there would be stuff coming out. I mean, if it's wanting to spread it and extend out like the mouth, I don't know. To me, it made more sense.
I mean, it was an uncomfortable moment. Like that scene happened, you're like, oh, it was a horrific scene. I didn't look at it in a sexualized way at all. Like that was a weird take to me, and also it made a lot of sense. Here's the thing: she was already infected, and with the way the show is taking this, once you're infected, you become part of this hive mind. That the game didn't work that way. But if that's the case, these other clickers now see her as part of the hive, and that clicker approaching her and trying to commune with her that way makes sense. It's the other tendrils trying to join that host. Like, I don't know. It was uncomfortable. It was horrific, but they took a really odd take on it. I mean, it was different than the game did. The game didn't have her go down by a bunch of zombies rushing in. They had Fedra agents chasing them the whole time. She went down to firefight.
Okay.
And some people argue that was better. The argument I think I've read that the reason they didn't do that was that it didn't make sense for the Fedra agents to just run through hordes of infected just to chase down these 2 randos. They were going to be like, let them die out in the wilderness, and it made more sense to let the infected take them. That worked for me. I mean, maybe some people didn't like it or thought it was cliche. I liked the whole setup. It was different than the game, but I thought Tess was still a really good character, and I didn't read the way they did at all.
I saw some people making the argument that they think why the showrunners decided to go in the direction, which I should also say, Neil Druckmann, a writer for the original games, is also the writer here with
I don't know if he's a writer, he's a producer.
Craig Mazin is the writer.
Yeah, the Chernobyl guy.
Yeah. But from what I understand, why they went with their new strand of fungus versus the spores from the original game, there's a lot of people were making the argument that like it's probably not so fun to follow your characters constantly wearing masks, so maybe they did it so their characters couldn't be maskless, like with Master Chief, kind of, but making more sense. You know
what's really funny about that? I think I read that and that's part of it, but Pedro Pascal was the Mandalorian who has gone seasons without taking off a helmet. So clearly he could have done it fine. Like, he's a fantastic actor. Everything I've seen him in, he's done an impeccable job.
I mean, you don't want you.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, I agree with that. But even in the game, you don't have those masks on that much. You go into a section, you put a mask on, you get out, you take it off. Like, I think they could have played that okay. The better rationale I heard in the game, it was you went into an area where there was like these little spore clouds and you had to put on the gas mask. That logically doesn't make sense. If this is airborne and it's out in the real world and there are spores, there aren't like isolated clouds. If that's in the air, it's in the air. You can't just like go into one segment and be like, oh, this is the spore area. And like if you walk through it, those spores are then on your clothes. As soon as you leave the area, it's not like you're safe. You've still got... That was a very gamey explanation. That worked in the context of a game because it helped you look at like, oh, these are the danger zones versus the safe zones. But in a show, that doesn't translate well. So honestly, the tendril stuff makes a lot more sense. I mean, you get infected when you get bitten or when you get, the tendrils on you or infected on the ground. That all, I think, just translates better to a show. But yeah.
I never liked the spore mechanic myself in the games.
You didn't?
I didn't. It made no sense. Like, exactly.
Exactly. I mean, it was fine for a game, and I think just as, somebody's playing a game, you're just like, okay, that's the mechanic. Doesn't mean it makes a lot of sense. So the show, I think, did a good thing tweaking it some. They still get to go through dangerous areas. Honestly, it's almost they seem like they're even more careful now going through these areas, because it's not just the spores that they see, it's the stuff on the ground that could get them. It's, I don't know. I like the direction they took.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there's only 2 episodes, right?
Yeah.
On HBO. I'll have to check them out.
So just to kind of like piggyback what you were just saying with the Kotaku article, because I didn't know anything about that until
I didn't even read it. I just heard some people talking about how it was a
Yeah.
talking point.
And the only reason
And
I'm
I
pretty
was-
sure that's what you're talking about is that title you said was the exact title of the article. Maybe there were other articles out there that were piggybacking off that, but that was the first place I saw it mentioned.
Well, I feel like I saw that title and I also heard it, but I heard someone reference it somewhere else, so
Yeah.
that's probably it.
I think
Go
all that
ahead.
crap is poppycock, to be honest.
People
way-
are-
the way-
oh,
the
go
whole
ahead, I'm sorry.
text- I was gonna say the whole testing not being like strong enough, that's garbage, because she was pretty strong majority of the time, even during the time with the what's her face, Marceline or whatever, or whatever her
Marlene.
name is, Marlene. That whole time she was about to just dump everything and just be like, yo, let's just go get the hell out of
Yeah,
here.
she was giving the
No.
orders half the time. Joel was
Yeah,
just kind of
yeah.
doing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like she was bossing him around and he was listening, and then she was pretty much the thing in his ear, the rational in his ear.
Well,
The
also if
majority
it
of the
wasn't
time,
if it wasn't for her this whole time, Joel would have just shot
he would have just
Ellie in
stayed
the
home.
face. He would have
would've
shot
been
Ellie in the
bored.
face and went home.
Yeah,
There would
he
be
even
no
said,
show without Tess right now.
Yeah, he even said it himself. He goes, "Let's just go home." Like he just wanted to go back home and live his boring ass life. Like really, literally, that's pretty much what he was doing. He just wanted to go back home.
I would
So
say,
like, yeah.
okay.
No, I was gonna say like that's just kind of and her volunteering herself to like kind of she went only soft for like a little bit, and it's only because she saw something in Ellie.
My only question
was
is,
it.
like, what does this episode leave up next? Like, where do you go? I mean, I guess the only other goal is to get Tommy. That's the only thing I can think
So
of.
the overarching goal, and this is where the whole game goes after this, is they still want to get her to the Fireflies. Like, as far as they know, she is a potential cure. That is the end game, because she knows there is a base out west. It's very
And
vague.
I know what happened with the Firefly.
Yeah, that was very vague.
Again, I watched a Let's Play too, so
Yeah,
I
so
know
I mean
what-
that's where it's going. They're trying to get to that point, and there's a bunch of checkpoints along the way. Like you saw, they got what's his face from Parks and Rec, the was it Bill and Frank or whatever it is. So they have some stopping points and meet some new characters, and if they track the game 1-to-1, I mean there's plenty of little things that happen along the way to get to that Firefly base. But that's their end game now, where they're trying to get to.
Yeah. What else? What were the other gripes? The whole kissing thing? That's so stupid.
that wasn't a. So
That's
just
dumb.
overall thoughts, you guys. Did you like it? Did you love it? You're
like
excited for next episode?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I agree.
Like the first episode roped me in. I was looking forward to the second one, and then seeing what happened then, I was like, okay, I'm liking this a lot.
Did they say
don't
how many
watch many
episodes
shows.
this was going to be?
I didn't even know it came out.
I haven't heard how many episodes. I can't imagine too
6
many.
or 7 at that length? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 10 at most. Because the original game, with all the gameplay, was not that long. It was, I don't
They're
know,
gonna
10 to
add a
15 hours, if that. So, I mean, you yank out some, gameplay time out of there. They, add some extra context in places. You're looking at like a 10 to 11 hour runtime for the show, I'd imagine. So, at most, I'd say 10 episodes, but we'll see.
They're
But
gonna pull a Squid Game, but do it like 12 and call it a day.
Maybe. But I think that this is an adaptation that so far is done very well. It's respectful to the source material, but they're not stuck to the source material. Like there's
I did see some. I also saw some people
I-
mad that they changed ethnicities for some people, and for me, I'm just like,
see, here's the thing.
I-
This is
okay.
only my personal take on it, but you guys can agree or disagree. I don't necessarily mind if they do, an ethnic, race swap kind of thing for a character, as long as that, original race wasn't part of the character. Like for certain characters, that is part of who they are. Not always. Sometimes it is just they were just white because they were white for whatever reason. But
Like
there
a
are
white guy having a black kid type deal. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
But there are times when it matters, okay? In this show, it doesn't matter. Like Joel, he could have been a black guy, white guy, whatever. It doesn't matter who he is. The character is still the character. So I think changing nationalities is perfectly fine. But there are other characters and other shows or other mediums where if you made that same switch, it wouldn't translate well.
Like changing the ancient one to a to a white lady.
And that's a stretch. And sometimes you can argue it if the person they cast can still fully embody the character. But you're right, if there's something ethnic about that character's history that you're now just kind of changing for the sake of changing. And let's be fair, a lot of shows change race and gender just to meet a certain whatever agenda, what have you, whether you agree with that or not. And that, I don't think it's okay. I don't feel like this is what the show did. I don't feel like they race swapped anybody just for the sake of doing it. Like Pedro Pascal is an excellent interpretation of Joel on the screen.
He's a great actor.
He's a great actor. And Bella Ramsey was great in Game of Thrones. She's doing a great job here. So, yeah.
I'm really happy with Pedro. I honestly haven't seen him in much. And this is the first time I'm really seeing him in something where I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
well, I remember he was in Game of Thrones.
He was in Game of Thrones. That was the first thing I know him from. But yeah,
that was the first thing I saw him in.
He was in something else beyond that. So this is like the third or fourth thing I've seen him in, and he's always been solid. And even in Mandalorian, where it didn't care what he looked like, he was able to act out and portray a character with just his presence and his voice acting alone. So, yeah, I think they got a really good cast to kind of carry the show forward.
Cool.
Alrighty, well that
We're about
wraps
to lose
up.
Blitz. He's hanging up.
He's about
he needs to get his blankie and go nighty night.
Yeah, I got a night.
All right, well, yeah, that wraps up our talk for Last of Us on HBO, and that wraps up week 27 of the EnteR ChatZ MaN Podcast.